I'm Donna Morrison, and I am here today to welcome you to how to morph your photography into great compositions using Photoshop elements. I started out years ago as a graphic artist, and being a graphic artist, you have to learn how to use all different kinds of software programs, and Photoshop was the program I used to help modify and manipulate photography for printing purposes. So when I got into painting, I realized, hey, this is a skill that can really help me with my painting because I love to take pictures. I love to play with pictures. I paint from pictures. And what better way to help with my compositions, with making the picture exactly how I want it to look in a very quick manner, than to use a program that I already know that can benefit me in so many different ways. So I'd like to share some of those ideas with you today. I'm going to actually be sharing my computer screen with you, so you won't have to look at my face much longer. So anyway, I just wanted to really encourage you to consider using Photoshop Elements. It's a great program. It's very inexpensive. It's kind of a simplified version of the big family suite, Photoshop and the Creative Cloud in Adobe. So I did a quick look on the internet, and you can get the program for anywhere from really $70 to right under $100. You can actually go online to adobe.com and download a free trial version so you can pay for it before you ever put down the first penny. So that's actually a great opportunity. What you're going to see from my computer may look very different from what you end up getting on your computer because the Mac format and the Windows format look a little bit different. And then the latest version is actually version 19. And so prior versions look a little bit different than the latest version. They all have the majority of the same tools and approach. And so I wouldn't worry about that at this point. A lot of this is going to be up to you to spend time learning the program. But what they do offer you is tutorials, and Google has tons of free tutorials that you can pull up as well, and it'll present with you to you the ideas of everything that the software program can offer you. So I encourage you to have fun with this. Don't get frustrated. I know watching this demo may be very helpful because it's so much easier to understand and learn by watching something than trying to read and then go to your computer and figure it out. So please watch this and then do Google searches for tutorials or use the tutorials that come with the software program and just have a great time. So without further ado, I am going to switch over now to my computer screen and we'll go from there. Thanks so much for joining me. Okay, what you guys are going to see is not my face, but my computer screen. I am on a Windows 10 platform, so if it looks different than yours, you will have to figure out this part on your own. I am looking in my pictures folder file where I have created all these different folders where I keep my images and artwork organized. So I'm clicking on my Florida Watercolor Society file that I've set up to give this demonstration. I've opened up some of the images that we are going to look at. I will work through a series of photo edits. I'll talk about the steps I'm going to take to correct the images into a better final composition. You will hear me repeat many steps as we work through each picture. Once you learn these steps, the repetition will sink in and it'll get easier and easier for you. This is the kind of program where you just have to work through some repetition to make it seem easy and intuitive, and you will be just fine. So first of all, I'm going to show you just some very simple changes that you can make. We are first going to look at this landscape. You can see that I like the composition. I like it. I feel like it's interesting, but there's one problem with it. If you guys aren't sure, look at the lines in the water. You can see that the image is just slightly not lined up correctly. So in Photoshop, you can simply rotate images a full quarter degrees, or you can do it customized. In this particular example, I literally rotated it 1.5 degrees, and you can see all the difference in the world. Next up, we're going to look at these ducks. Here is a trimmed down version of the initial picture that I took. You can see that in this picture, there's too much space on the right with little space on the left. The reason that's problematic to me is because the duck is facing off the left-hand side of the page, and so it kind of leads the viewer off instead of into the picture. So what I did first was, if you looked at this, I feel like we don't need quite so much space around the duck. So I also realized that it wasn't quite lined up similar to the landscape. It was slightly rotated. So again, I reduced down some of the space around the duck and I rotated it just slightly. After that, I wanted to show you the difference between the duck facing out versus the duck facing in. And again, trimmed down and slightly rotated to get it square. So now it looks like the duck is leading you into the picture. It's just come up from having its face in the water, digging around for breakfast, and it's all part of a great composition, 1/3, 2/3. So again, that's just a simple editing the image down slightly, rotating it slightly, and then in this case, I actually selected the duck and the duck's reflection from this original photograph, and I flopped that part of the picture and pasted it in and finished the composition. I will show you those steps in a minute. Here we're going onto my desktop and selecting the Adobe Photoshop icon. The program's going to come up. It's going to give you 3 different choices that you can make. Right now, the only one we're going to be talking about is photo editor. There is a video editor, and there's also a photo organizer that you can look into on your own time and possibly learn how to use those. So with the photo editor, you have 3 different choices that come up as well. You are going to have quick, guided, and expert as 3 options that you can utilize to help you in your journey of photo editing. The guided is actually more like a tutorial. It shows you the different things that you can accomplish using Photoshop elements. So with these 3 selections at the top, if you first hit guided, you can come down and just kind of scroll through some samples that show you basic editing, color editing, black and white editing, fun things you can do, special effects, and even merging photos together. So spend a few minutes just looking through these things. Like, for example, here's a before and after with changing skin tone, a before and after with brightness and contrast, a before and after with photo cropping. So again, spend a minute looking through those and familiarizing yourself with that. The quick version is not what I use, but it is potentially good when you're first starting out to, you can pull up Google and look at tutorials. When you get this program, it comes with different help options that you can look through. These selections are just preset changes that the computer will suggest for you when you open a photograph. You can rotate down at the bottom. You can see that. You can do cropping. You can add text. There's a lot of different things you can do. This is a limited version of what you can do, and so I don't use this. I go straight to the expert. Don't let that word scare you off, because again, I am no expert, but I have just learned how to utilize the steps in this version of the program that make things the easiest for me. So I am going to open up a couple of these images that we talked about before so we can actually see what I did. So the very first thing we looked at was just the simple rotation of the landscape. So, okay, I zoomed through that, but you go back to when you actually want to open up a file, you click on File, Open. And what this does is it brings up your hard drive and your computer setup. With this scrolling button over here, you can scroll up. You will see your desktop, your documents. I have everything set up in my pictures file. If you continue to scroll down, you will see other connections such as removable hard drive, an SD card, any number of things that you may have using your storage capacity with your photographs. So I'm just looking at my desktop right now where I had these pictures set up. So I scrolled down over here on the right until I got to where I knew I had my picture and opened it up. So again, the only thing we had to do in here is rotate the picture. Before you can do anything, what you have to do is select the picture. So you go up to select at the top, you click all, and then you get these marching ants around the edges of your picture. And then you go up to image, and the very first thing you see is rotate. And you swing over, and you can do basic big rotations like 90 degrees, 180 degrees. You can flip it horizontal and vertical, which sometimes you want to do. So if I flipped it horizontal, it's just completely creating the inverse of the picture. If you don't like what you just did, you go back and say undo what I just did under edit. So again, this picture's still selected. Under image, I'm going to hit rotate, and I'm going to hit custom rotate, which is not available in the quick version. So you have to do a custom rotate in the expert version. So right now it's set at 0.5% rotation. I'm going to actually make it 1.5 and hit OK. And then it rotates, and it's perfectly dead on. What you see now is the problem is when you rotate it, your picture is no longer square because the entire picture rotates. So what you have to do is trim your picture back down so that it fits proportionally. So if you come over here on the left, this is your crop tool. So you will come up to your picture, and the crop tool is giving me a suggestion, or the program's giving me a suggested crop. So all you do is you grab the anchor points on that crop, and you can move them wherever you want. I want mine to be just to the very edges, and then I hit OK. And then my picture is now square again. There are other things you can do, such as fill that space by copy and repeating your photograph. So if there's something important on the edge of the photograph that you don't want to lose by rotating and trimming your photograph, you can copy and repeat and fill that space. I can quick show you how to do that. So let's say undo crop. And we're back to this. So I'm going to take my magnifying tool and come over and just look at this area right here close up. So all I did was click and I dragged my mouse over that area and it zoomed in. So this tool right here is your clone. It's called a clone stamp tool. It allows you to copy and repeat. So like all of this greenery, if I, instead of trimming the picture, if I wanted to fill that in, I can hold down my Alt key, ALT, on my computer and drag my mouse over the area that's closest to that blank area. And then I lift up the Alt key and I click down my mouse and just start filling in that area. So what's going to happen is that it's a little bit tricky. It's going to copy exactly the area that you dragged across, either diagonally, horizontally, or vertically, however you copied the area, it's going to repeat that in the new area. So I can literally fill in that whole space there by doing that. And you can go all the way up and down your whole picture and do that. Now, if I made a mistake, you can go back by hitting the edit, undo clone stamp, and you can keep going back in steps that you took. So you saw that it went back step by step by step as I copied some, lifted my finger up, copied some, lifted my finger up. That's a little bit complicated for where we are right now, but I just wanted to quickly show you that so that you had an idea of something down the road to work towards learning. So we're going to get out of this picture. Next up, we will look at a trio of ducks that were actually the same duck that I took multiple pictures of. And this is interesting because it shows you how you can use many pictures in a combination to create a composition. So here's a picture of shoveler duck, and it's looking around different directions, and I just thought it was so cute. And so I took the duck from 3 different versions and I just spliced them together to see what I thought. It kind of reminds me of Larry, Moe, and Curly. The idea of a trio, it's always fun. I find people really enjoy humor in my paintings, and so if you can interject humor, oftentimes it goes a long way for folks. So in this situation, obviously I don't want any of that background noise going on. It doesn't really matter if I leave it this way because I know I can paint it out. My plan is just to paint a very basic background. Putting them on the pebbles is fine. So here's the final painting. You can see how I incorporated some of that and left out all of the other background. Again, I will show you how to do that in Photoshop. Next up, we will look at another simple change. I had taken some close-up pictures of a pelican, and I loved the way this one looked with the dead-on stare, the light side, and the shadow side. The only problem was I accidentally trimmed off the top of his head, and I really wanted that because he had a cute little crown of feathers sticking straight up, which I captured in the next picture as he rotated his head just slightly. So what I did was I actually copied this top little feathery part and stuck it on the top of the head of the first one so that I gained that extra little bit of space and those feathers on the top. And now I'm much happier with this composition to be able to paint. Another photograph that we will look at editing, this is one you guys may be familiar with. It's a reddish egret that I painted, and again modified the photograph slightly. Ended up having this in the show last year, and have had a lot of good success with it. So in this picture, just a fabulous bird. And yes, I could just leave it alone and paint it and interpret it how I wanted to, but I really wasn't sure if I wanted to include this bird, if I wanted to include the background. I knew I wanted to get rid of this background, just wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to do. So again, it really helps me to work through it in Photoshop first. So you can see here from this picture, I got rid of that upper background, I got rid of the birds. I decided I didn't need so much space on the left side of the image, so I made the bird much more commanding. You can see that it needs to be rotated. It's slightly out of rotation. In this instance, I really didn't worry about it. When I sketched it, I just sketched it straight. And what I did do, since there was so much blue all around this bird and the bird itself was so much gray blue, I decided I needed to break that up when I went to paint it. So I created this atmosphere behind the bird that ended up working out really well, and had a successful painting out of that. Let's go to our next picture. We talked about the duck. So I opened this picture of the duck, and we talked about how it was slightly rotated. So again, I go up to image, rotate, custom rotate. It was off by about 1 degree to the right. So I rotate it, and then I wanted to trim it. So again, I'm going to get my crop tool. You can click and drag that crop tool if you want it to move to a different place on your picture. So I wanted to trim some of that picture down. I didn't want all of that extra space around the duck. It wasn't necessary. So I wanted to keep as much of the reflection as I could get though. So here's where we're at. I hit OK down here, the green check mark, once I'm done with that. So I'm happy with the spacing of the duck. I'm going to go up to edit, or up to enhance. Under enhance, from the top down, you have all these auto correction that the computer will do as you select them, like auto contrast. It will improve the contrast of your picture, auto sharpen, include, all of those, and it improves your image. You can go into adjusting the lighting. You can adjust color. You can remove haze if it's a hazy picture. There's all kinds of opportunities. You just need to spend time stepping through those. Now, I talked about how I selected the duck and flopped it so that it would be facing in instead of out. So this tool right here is a wand that selects things that are similar in color, or there's a hard break between its color and the next color. So for example, the duck's bill, there's a hard break in color between the orange and the green in the background. So when I select this tool and I click down my mouse and start to drag over the duck, if it wants to cooperate. There we go. Sometimes it's not very cooperative. I'm not sure why. But you can see, possibly, maybe not, the marching ants that are showing up again. And I'm just going over the duck, going to a new place, clicking. So I'm going to keep just dragging my mouse over this whole area because I want the duck, its whole reflection, to flop on this image. So as you can see, it takes a few minutes to actually drag over the whole duck and get all the parts of the picture that you want. Okay, so in dragging all of that, it also grabbed all of this water. And that's okay, because when you flop the picture, sometimes you want extra space around it to flop as well. And then you can eliminate that, because if you remember, I said this program works in layers. So I'm going to actually copy this duck, and then, you know what? I'm actually going to select more of the water around it so I don't get in trouble with not having enough. So now this whole area is selected. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to open up a new blank file. I'm going to paste the duck on that. I'm going to flip it. Then I'm going to copy it. Select all. Copy. And then I'm going to go back to my original picture. And paste the duck. So I had to open up a separate file, just a blank file, place the picture in there, flip it, select it, copy it so it's on a clipboard. It's like in the memory of the computer. Open back up the first file and paste it on top. So now I've got this duck facing the right direction, but it's not a smooth transition. So what I want to do now is select my eraser tool, which is right here, and I'm going to actually eliminate part of this second layer so that I can try to blend the two together. First, I have to make sure it's selected. So I go back, I get the pointer tool, I click on it, so it's selected. If you're not sure about your layers, under View, excuse me, it's under Windows, you can look at your layers, F11, and it shows up over here on your right. So you can see layer number 1 is considered the duck. The background is actually, in my mind, layer number 1, but they consider the background the underneath, and then the duck is layer number 1. So anyway, I have it selected. I'm going to go back, get my eraser tool. You can change the size of your eraser tool down at the bottom here, so it can be really big. You see the circle that's over the duck? That's my eraser tool. So I obviously don't want it that big. I want it much smaller. So this looks like a pretty good size. And I start dragging over that pasted format, and see how as I'm making the edge disappear, I can almost just smooth the two together. Come over here. I'm erasing again part of the top layer. So what's showing up is the underneath layer. I'm getting rid of that hard edge. At some point, what's going to happen is the picture underneath, the duck underneath, is going to start showing back up because I'm going to go too far with what I'm erasing. Like right there, you see the tail of the duck just popped up, which is okay. I know I don't want to go any further than that, but I want to try to get the original picture back as much as I can up until you get to the reflection, because I want the reflection to match the duck. So right now the orange beak's there, the orange beak, all this reflection matches this duck. So I know I've erased enough. It looks like pretty much the original picture underneath is showing through. I'm erasing a little bit more around his face. You know, you can micromanage that and spend a lot of time. But for the most part, I've got the duck flopped. I've got the background the way I want it, except for these parts of the duck that are showing up. So what I'm going to do to fix that is either I could go back and remove some of those steps, but it's going to be hard because I want it to go right up to the edge. So I'm going to keep getting some little bits of the underneath duck showing. What you can do is, instead of having these two layers, you go under layer selection, and down at the bottom it says flatten image. When you click flatten image, it makes all the layers one layer. So it's no longer two pieces, it's one. And now that I have those as one layer, I can go over and use that tool I showed you in the prior picture where you can copy part of an image and get it to fill up an area next to it. So this area over here, and again with this copy and repeat tool, you can change the size of it here down at the bottom. So I want to make it a little bit bigger. So I can again hold down my Alt key, click my mouse and hold it and slide horizontally, lift up on the Alt key, click my mouse, continue to slide, and it is basically copying everything that's, watch when I hold down and slide, you see the little plus sign that's to the right of the circle? That's where it's copying from. So I'm just literally copying the photograph over the area where that duck from underneath was showing through. And I can do that and get rid of all those pieces of that duck. Even his reflection that was down there, because in this flop version, you wouldn't see those pieces of that duck. The same thing over here, a little tiny piece of this duck showed up back here, so I'm copying part of that. And so now I've got the picture just how I want it, and I can save it and be done with it and move on to the next item. You go up to File, Save. It's going to ask you to name it. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. Again, I use my picture file. I keep everything in named files that I've created, and you can change it, the format, from a JPEG to a PDF to a TIFF file and other formats that we're not messing with right now. So that's that for this picture. Next up, we can look at the another simple little transition that we did with the reddish egret picture. So again, in this picture, we talked about eliminating this background, eliminating this bird, trimming the picture down some. So it would be easy to go ahead and trim the picture first, and it would just eliminate this bird. I want there to be good headroom above the bird, so I'm not going to trim any of the top or bottom. I'm going to leave all of that there. I like the reflection. So again, to get rid of this background, I would use my clone tool. I'm going to make it larger. I'm going to copy the water, so I'm going to start underneath of it, hold my Alt key, drag my mouse, let it up, and then go back and drag some more. And you can see how easy to get rid of that background. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going and micromanaging that, but you can, again, if we wanted to rotate it, rotate under custom, maybe one click a little bit to the right, so that would straighten up the water. So again, those are simple, easy steps to make that photograph what you need right off the bat. Let's look at the ducks. So here, I literally, this is a selection tool. When you select something, you can change you can do all the changes as long as it's, so the neat thing about this is I could select just the duck's head and make changes only to what's in that square. Nothing else in the picture would change. So here, for example, if I did adjust the lighting, so I come down to that, and this lighting tool allows you to change highlights, midtones, and darks. And this shows you the distribution of light in the photograph. So we've got a lot of heavy, darker area, not a lot of light. So maybe I want just the head to be lighter for whatever reason. Sometimes I can't get these things to select. So here, you can see that just the square where the duck's head is lighting up, everything else in the picture is staying the same. So sometimes that's really a nice benefit if you've got a picture where it's really busy and you want to just take one aspect of the picture and make it pop. You could push everything else back, darken it or blur it, and keep that one element. So the way that you would do that would be with this selection tool. You can go in and select something quickly and easily if it's got hard edges that separate it from its background. If it doesn't have hard edges that separate it from its background, you have to manually select it, which gets a bit more complicated. I'm going to hopefully see that I can select just the duck for the most part. So here I have the duck mostly selected. Again, we're brushing on this. The background's not selected. So I'm going to actually copy that duck. And now I'm going to take the selection off, so when I make a change, the whole picture will change. So we can go under filters, and there's all kinds of different things that you can do. You can go under pixelate, and it'll do, you really need to just go in here and play and learn how these work. We don't have time in our workshop right now in the demonstration to show you that, but I just clicked on some crazy stuff. I wasn't even really paying attention, but you can see how you can change things. But because I copied my duck first, I can go back under edit and paste what's on my clipboard, which is the duck, and there's my duck back again. So you could see how you could completely change your picture by doing something like that, or you could copy your duck and paste it onto another image. So again, I actually cut 3 different versions of this duck out and pasted them together, but I could have also copied and pasted. So here's a version of the duck. I could have pasted this second duck, put him right next to him, gone back and copied the third duck, put him over here, and there I had my picture. It was just simply faster to open up a picture, drag my selection tool, copy, open up another one, paste. But you can, again, select using the selection tool, or like I mentioned before, if it's not a good clean selection, this lasso tool allows you to literally go in and point by point draw around something and select it. So you can see as I'm moving, I'm clicking my mouse and I'm holding down the Alt key. Again, the Alt key is used a lot by Photoshop. So if I wanted to just copy this duck's head, I literally am just clicking and creating a series of lines around him. And when I stop and lift my fingers off, the marching ants come back. Can go up, copy, I could cut it out. I could paste it back. While it's selected, I could click and see how you have these boxes at the corner. You can select those and drag them. So literally I just flopped the head of the duck. Who would ever know? You would know because of the lighting. You can rotate by grabbing the corners. You can make it bigger. Here's rotating. You can do all kinds of things. What really gets complicated is when you try to create a picture out of many pictures, and that gets very time intensive. You have to do a lot of cut and paste and layering and eliminating and photo editing. You can photo edit all the way down to pixels, micropixels. Like here's the photograph, here's my selection tool where I can zoom in. You literally can zoom all the way in so you see these pixels, and I could, if I really needed to, manage on that level some little speck, like if I was doing photo editing of an old picture and it had a scratch on it, I could get down into the pixels and mess with it. You don't really need to do that when you're working with just trying to set up a composition for painting. Again, on this skimmer picture, I needed to take an element off another photograph and add it onto a photograph that was missing an element. So when I found the wing on this one, I used my selection tool, or possibly because I could use these same legs to do it quickly, you could drag the selection across this whole bird, copy that part of him, close down that picture, don't need it anymore, open up this picture. Now what I want to do is paste the wing of that other bird onto this bird. So in this situation, the wing might not be exactly the right size. It's pretty close. I'm looking, kind of looking at the size of the legs. Is it good enough? I think it's good enough. I might just place that right there. While it's selected, I'm going to grab my eraser tool, bump up the size of my eraser tool, eliminate the part of that bird that I don't want, which is pretty much everything but the wing. So everything about that other picture, other than the wing, I'm erasing. So it looks like I need to move this wing back just a hair. It was a little too close. Well, there you see this leg is lined up with the leg underneath of it. So that's all there was to that. This little bit of dark right there, that is the beak from the other bird that was crossing over. So again, if you look at the layers, you can see that I've got the background photograph, and then layer number 1 is the wing over top of that bird. What I also should do is probably, that's not what I want to do, is, I'm going to leave the background water. I might as well. Okay, so I am going to merge my layers. So I go to layer, flatten image, and now I can photo edit those 2 layers because they are now one. So I'm going to zoom in on that little extra beak that we don't need there, and I am going to use my clone tool. I need to reduce down the size of it. Hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to slide up so I can get rid of that beak. So all I'm doing is copying the bird's leg now over top of that beak. It's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect. And copy his underneath feathers over this dark part. And pretty much done. So again, very easy steps. Once you learn the mechanics of how this worked, I copied this wing off another bird, pasted it on here, eliminated parts of it by using the eraser tool that I didn't need. I flattened the image so it was one image altogether, so then I could copy and remove some final little edits, and we were done. Okay, here's another good quick look at a situation where you should take as many pictures of the same subject as possible, just in case there's a slight change in one picture that you would like to incorporate that is not in another picture. So when we look at these 4-up on a log turtles, you can see at the top that the top 2 turtles are in focus, but the bottom 2 turtles start getting a little bit out of focus. So the next picture I took, the bottom 2 turtles were in very clear focus, but then the top 2 turtles were out of focus. So taking the combination of the exact same turtles from the 2 different pictures and putting them together, we now have the same exact poses, the same turtles, but all 4 of them are clear. And that was simply copying these 2 turtles from the clear photograph, placing them on top of the 2 turtles in the photograph where they were blurry, merging the 2 together and saving it. As simple as that. Then things start getting more complicated. This is a picture of a grouper that was taken underwater, and I loved the coral head. I loved the dimension of up close and far away, the plant matter back in the background, the texture of the coral, the fish and all his beautiful striping. But the fish is what I wanted to be my main subject matter, and it's just too small and too lost. The color underwater gets very blued out because of the particles in the water between you and the image you're taking a picture of. And so you have to modify your picture using enhancing elements of the software program. What I did in this particular image, I loved this 3-point piece of coral. I loved the fish. I liked the color in the rock here. I like this edging where you drop back and have dimension of the background. So I actually copied this, cut it basically, pasted it over here, greatly enlarged, and remade this whole picture. So first I color enhanced it to see what kind of color I could get out of the picture, removing some of the blue from the water. Then I took this 3-point piece of coral and the fish, cut it out, pasted it, enlarged it, and made this new design, where now I'm happy with the size of the fish. I'm happy with the elements of what I can see in the photograph. I trimmed it down and enhanced the color a little bit more, bringing it back up a little bit brighter. And then I painted it. That was many steps of changing your photograph to get your final composition. There's another one I can show you where I stayed in the same picture, but there was a lot of busyness in the picture and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with this. So here are these fishermen casting a net for mullet. There's all these docks, these 2 other boats, this background of tree line. I don't want all of that. I just love these 2 guys, their boat, and the net. So I actually very roughly eliminated everything else except for them, trimmed it down, kind of copied water over the space. I can't really get rid of the docks behind the casting of the net. I just have to deal with it, but this at least gives me the idea of what my painting can look like. So here's my finished painting. Okay, this is the final image we are going to look at today. One of the popular things that people like to do is paint buildings, paint cityscapes, and you get into trouble with perspective because things are taller than what you are. So here I am in this picture taking a picture of a castle that's obviously much taller than I am, and so I also have a bit of a wide angle lens on so that I can get a lot of information in a single picture, and what that creates is a distortion of angles. So the angle over here and the angle over here is not correct. And if I want to paint that and make it look realistic, I need to improve that. So here you can see I've modified the picture. I've auto enhanced the color and the contrast. I've made it brighter and lighter. I've completely fixed the angles on the image, and I have a much better subject matter than one that is too dark and not in proportion. So the way that you do that is you pull your photograph up in Photoshop, you select the entire photograph so that you have your marching ants, and then you're going to go under Image, Transform, and you have a number of different selections here that do different things. Distort is the one that I want because it is going to help me have the most control over each of the corners of my photograph. So I want this line that's leaning to the right to get straight. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the bottom of this picture and start moving it in. And as you see, as I move it in, the line gets straighter and straighter. But what also is happening is I'm getting a crazy looking picture. So those are things that, because of all this space, so those are things that you will continue to modify as you move forward. I'm going to pull in this side as well to try to straighten up this edge of this window. And now the problem you see is I still have these angles here in the middle. So I'm going to try pulling down from the middle a little bit. What I'm going to have to do is go back to the angles and create even more change in the overall photograph. So you can see I'm only concerned about the building right now. I'm not worrying about the background. So I'm going to probably do a similar, I don't want to lose, I've got this nice almost straight line here now and almost straight line there. And so I'm going to work to try to get my angle of the edge of my window a little bit straighter here. And so now I'm getting a lot closer to the correct lines, but we have all these crazy things going on in the photograph. One of the things that you can see that happens when you move those angles is my people got a little bit too short, which means the overall picture is too short. So I can grab this middle button and pull up, and it kind of stretches the entire picture back to its more original correct proportional height. This takes a little bit of time to continue to modify back and forth. As you can see, this building here is not perfectly straight still. I would just continue to modify that until I get everything the way I want it to be. And then you come down here and you click your OK button. I would want to enhance. So I'm going under enhance and allow some of the auto enhance functions to run over the photograph and see what it will do for it. That one brightened it a lot. I will sharpen everything, auto sharpen. So all of my colors are getting a lot brighter. So what I'm going to have to do now is go in and try to trim up a little bit with my crop tool. It'll let me. I can get rid of information in the picture that I don't need, like just extension of the wall over here. I don't really need that. For case in point, for case of just trying to get finished with this quickly, I'll go ahead and say okay with that. So here, this is just blank sky. So you can always leave it as is and paint it in, stick a cloud in there. Again, I can use my copy and repeat tool and fill it in just for the viewer's recognition to see what would look best in those areas. So I copied my clone tool. I'm just copying more of that sky, that blank sky, to fill in that hole, just so you can kind of, again, it helps so much to have a visual idea of where you're going. And we're all taught to do that with sketching out a black and white copy of your whole picture. This just allows you to do it a lot quicker. So here's a very rough representation of that whole castle. The lines are much straighter. I can look at it and decide from here, make some other decisions of what I want to keep, how I would like to modify it. Do I want the people? Do I not want the people? All of those choices that come with creating your composition. So with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for being part of the Florida Watercolor Society's online convention. This is a historic year for us in many different ways, and we so appreciate your willingness to be part of it and to help our organization move into the future and continue to be successful. So thank you again for your participation. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love any feedback. Please feel free to email me at donnamorrisonart@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Thank you again. Take care. Bye-bye.